Good morning, people of Earth. From the skies to the shores and to all the ships at sea, radio-free humanity is on the air.
Let's talk about truth with Amadeo and Iris. Are stories only lies, or something more?
You know how much we all love speculative content, right? Those stories that really make you think about the boundaries of what could be true and what's purely fictional. Well, today, we're diving into a genre that really embodies that kind of liminal space between fact and fiction.
Oh, yeah. Sounds intriguing.
Let's talk about folk tales.
Yeah.
You know, those stories that have been passed down through generations, often with origins that are shrouded in mystery.
Right. Like those stories that leave you wondering, could there be a real experience or a real event at the heart of this fantastical tale? Or is it pure imagination?
Exactly. And that's the central question we're going to grapple with today. Are folk tales purely fictional, or do they contain elements of truth?
It's a question that's been debated for ages, and we're not going to pretend to have all the answers, but we do have some fascinating perspectives to share from some really interesting sources that explore the nature of folktales' truth and even the relationship between faith and reason.
Yeah, so we've got an article here called Are Folk Tales Fiction or Nonfiction? From Great American Adventures, and another one called Faith and Reason from the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Oh, and we also have Truth, Contemporary Philosophy, and the Postmodern Turn from Stand to Reason.
Right, so we're going to be drawing on all of these different perspectives to kind of see what light they can shed on this age-old question and get this. You know how libraries often categorize folk tales as nonfiction?
Really, huh? That's interesting.
It's kind of a surprising fact that I think highlights just how blurry the lines can be between fact and fiction when it comes to this genre.
Yeah, that definitely sets the stage for a deeper dive. I'm curious to see what we uncover.
Me too. So let's jump right in. Clayton Newton, in his article, Are Folktales Fiction or Nonfiction?, points out that folktales are generally seen as purely fictional.
That's true. I mean, when we think about stories with talking animals and magical creatures, it's natural to assume they're just products of our imagination.
Right, but then why do libraries sometimes classify them as nonfiction?
Well, you have to remember that folktales, while being narratives, are often rooted in nonfiction elements. You know, they can reflect a culture's customs, values, and beliefs. They can tell us about historical events or even social practices, and that's why they're sometimes categorized under social sciences in libraries.
Okay, so it's not about the literal events necessarily being true, but more about the underlying truths they might convey about a particular culture.
Exactly. In fact, the Dewey Decimal System, the system used to categorize books in most libraries, has a specific classification for folktales 398.2.
Wow, they even have a special number for them.
They do, and that classification includes fairy tales, myths, legends, and fables.
So it seems like there's a real recognition within the library system, at least, that these stories hold a different kind of truth than, say, a history textbook or a scientific journal.
Right. It's not about objective facts in the same way, but it's about a different kind of truth, a truth that speaks to human experience, cultural values, and even our deepest fears and aspirations.
I like a truth that speaks to human experience. So how can stories that might not be factually accurate still hold truth? You know, what does that even mean?
Well, going back to Clayton Newton's article, he argues that the truth in folktales often lies in the wisdom and insights they offer about human nature, societal values, and those core beliefs that shape a culture.
So it's like how in speculative fiction we often see fantastical scenarios that help us explore deeper truths about ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. Both genres invite us to think beyond the everyday, to consider different possibilities and to understand reality from a different angle.
And I think that's part of why I personally find myself drawn to both folktales and speculative content.
Yeah.
Just that sense of wonder, that exploration of what if.
Right. And that kind of exploration can lead to some really profound insights. It can help us to understand ourselves and our place in the world in a way that straightforward factual accounts sometimes can't.
So it's like, even though the events in a folktale might not have literally happened, the story itself can still reveal something true about the human condition or the culture that produced it.
Precisely. And that's where the connection to faith and reason comes in, which we can see reflected in the Faith and Reason article. The speculative nature of folktales often touches upon questions that religion and philosophy have been grappling with for centuries, like the nature of good and evil, the meaning of life, or the existence of the supernatural.
Okay, so we're talking about stories that may not be literally true. that they can still speak to some of our deepest existential questions.
Right, and that's a powerful thing, you know? These stories can offer comfort, guidance, and even a sense of meaning in a world that can often feel chaotic and uncertain.
It's making me think about all those folk tales that features supernatural beings or magical events, you know? It's like, even if we don't literally believe in those things, the stories themselves can still tap into our sense of awe and wonder and maybe even our longing for something beyond the mundane.
Absolutely, and that's part of what makes these stories so enduring, you know? They speak to something deep within us, something that transcends time and culture.
But even if folk tales reflect cultural truths, there's still the question of whether any specific story might be based on a real event. You know, Newton mentions in his article how hard it is to verify the origins of these stories. It's like, we might have an intriguing story, but no way to know if it started as an actual experience.
Yeah, that's the mystery that surrounds a lot of folktales, right?
Yeah.
We might have a story about a hero who slayed a dragon or a village that was saved by a magical creature, but can we ever know for sure if those events actually happened?
Right, and I think that ambiguity is part of what makes folktales so captivating, you know? Yeah, it's like they invite us to consider the possibilities, to wonder what might be true, even if definitive proof is elusive.
Exactly, and that's something that I think resonates with people who enjoy speculative content, you know, that thrill of not knowing for sure, that pondering of the potential for something extraordinary to be rooted in reality.
It's like we're drawn to those stories that dance on the edge of believability, that make us question what's possible and what might lie beyond the realm of our everyday experience.
Right. It's about embracing that sense of wonder and mystery and allowing ourselves to be captivated by stories that might just hold a grain of truth.
So if folktales can contain these different layers of truth, how do we as listeners and readers decide what to believe? Do we just accept everything at face value, or is there a way to approach these stories with a healthy dose of skepticism?
That's where things get really interesting, right? How do we navigate these stories that blend fact and fiction, and how do we determine what to take away from them?
Right, because it's not like we could just apply the same standards of evidence that we would to a news report or scientific study.
Folktales operate in a different realm, a realm where imagination and symbolism and cultural values are all intertwined.
So how do we make sense of that? How do we approach these stories in a way that's both appreciative and discerning?
Well, that's where the different philosophical perspectives on truth come into play. And that's where our third source, truth, contemporary philosophy, and the postmodern turn is going to be really helpful.
Okay, so we're about to get philosophical.
We are. And don't worry, it's not as intimidating as it sounds.
I hope not.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely intrigued. So let's dive into these different perspectives on truth and see how they can help us make sense of the fascinating world of folktales.
Sounds like a plan. Let's start with the correspondence theory of truth.
Okay, correspondence theory of truth. I've heard of that, but I'll admit I could use a refresher. So what is it exactly?
Sure. So the correspondence theory suggests that a statement is true if it accurately reflects reality.
Okay, so if a folktale claims that a magical creature helped a village, the correspondence theory would require evidence of that creature and its actions for the statement to be considered true.
Right. So from that perspective, a lot of folktales would likely be considered false because they involve elements that can't be empirically verified, you know, like talking animals or magical objects or supernatural beings.
So for someone who strictly adheres to the correspondence theory, a folktale with fantastical elements would be automatically labeled as false.
Well, not necessarily. Remember, we're talking about layers of truth. Even if the fantastical elements aren't literally true, the story might still accurately reflect cultural practices or beliefs, or even historical events.
I see. So the correspondence theory doesn't completely rule out the possibility of truth in folktales, but it does set a high bar for what qualifies as true.
Exactly. And that's where another perspective postmodernism comes into play. This view suggests that truth is more fluid, shaped by our cultural and social context.
The postmodernism challenges the idea of a single objective truth.
It does. It suggests that truth is more about interpretation and meaning-making than about finding a one-to-one correspondence with reality.
Okay, so for a postmodernist, a folktale's truth might lie in its cultural significance, even if the events depicted never literally happened.
Precisely. The truth might be in how the story reflects societal values or anxieties or aspirations, even if it features talking animals or magical occurrences.
I'm starting to see how these different perspectives add layers of complexity to how we view folktales. It's not just about saying this happened, this didn't. It's about exploring those deeper meanings and cultural reflections.
Right. And for someone who enjoys exploring speculative content, it becomes even more fascinating. You're already open to considering different realities and questioning the boundaries of what's possible. And folktales offer a rich playground for that kind of
Yeah,
exploration.
that's a great way to put it, a playground for the imagination.
Right. And on that playground, we can explore different ways of understanding truth, different ways of making meaning, and different ways of connecting with the human experience.
But also makes me wonder if truth can be so subjective and context dependent. How do we navigate that? How do we make sense of a world where there isn't always one clear right answer?
That's a question that philosophers have been wrestling with for ages, and it's something that we're going to explore further as we dive deeper into this discussion.
Okay, so there's more to come.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started.
This is already giving me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way. But before we get too deep into the philosophical weeds, let's bring it back to the folktales themselves. Are there specific examples where we can see these different layers of truth at play? You know, stories where we can really see how fact and fiction might be interwoven in fascinating ways.
Absolutely. Let's take the story of Robin Hood, for instance. He's a great example. Did a real Robin Hood actually rob from the rich and give to the poor in medieval England? It's one of those questions that historians still debate today, but
Yeah, they might never know for sure, but
the fact that the story has endured for centuries and continues to resonate with people all over the world suggests that there's something more to it than just the historical fact.
right. So the story speaks to something deeper. You know, some fundamental truth about our desire for fairness and justice.
Exactly. And that's where the connection to your interest in speculative content becomes even stronger. You know, speculative fiction like folktales often takes a what-if scenario and uses it to explore human nature, societal structures, or ethical dilemmas.
Oh, totally. It's like both genres use fantastical elements as a lens to examine real-world issues and possibilities.
Precisely. And in doing so, they can sometimes reveal truths that are harder to grasp through straightforward factual accounts.
This is making me think about how folktales were often used to teach moral lessons. Could that be considered another layer of truth? You know, the kind of truth that we're talking about?
Absolutely. Folktales can be incredibly effective tools for transmitting values and cultural norms. You know, the stories often feature clear consequences for good and bad actions, reinforcing societal expectations.
Yeah, it's like in The Boy Who Cried Wolf. It's not just a fun story about a mischievous shepherd. It's a lesson about honesty and the importance of being trustworthy.
Exactly. And even though these stories might not be based on specific verifiable events, the moral truths they convey can have a profound impact on how we understand right and wrong. You know, they shape our values and our beliefs and ultimately influence our actions.
Wow, I'm realizing how much I've taken these stories at face value without considering the deeper layers of meaning they might hold. It's like I've been missing out on a whole dimension of understanding.
And it gets to the heart of critical thinking. You know, we don't want to blindly accept everything we hear, especially when dealing with stories that often involve the supernatural or the extraordinary.
Right? It's like we need to find that balance between appreciating the beauty and the wisdom of folktales without falling into the trap of believing everything we hear.
Exactly. It's about engaging with these stories thoughtfully. You know, using our reason and our judgment to discern what resonates with us as truthful and what we might question.
Okay, so it's not about just throwing out our critical thinking skills. It's about applying those skills in a nuanced way.
Right. It's about recognizing that not all truths are created equal. Some truths are based on verifiable evidence, while others are more subjective or rooted in cultural beliefs.
So how do we do that in practice? Yeah. You know, how can we appreciate the wonder and the magic of folktales while also being discerning about what we choose to believe?
It's a process, right? It's about asking questions, considering different perspectives, and being willing to hold multiple truths in our minds at the same time.
Can you give an example of what that might look like, you know, when encountering a specific folktale?
Sure. Let's take the story of King Arthur. It's a tale filled with magic and chivalry and epic battles. Now, a strict correspondence theorist might dismiss the entire story as false because there's no historical evidence of a King Arthur who wielded Excalibur and fought alongside the Knights of the Round Table.
Right. But someone who embraces a more postmodern view might argue that the truth of the story lies in its reflection of medieval values and ideals and social structures.
Exactly. They might focus on how the story explores themes of honor and loyalty and the struggle between good and evil, recognizing these as enduring human concerns, even if the specific events are fictional.
So it's not about proving or disproving the literal truth of the story, but rather about understanding what it reveals about the culture that created it and the universal themes that it explores.
Precisely. And someone who enjoys speculative content might take it a step further, asking questions like, what if a figure like King Arthur did exist? What impact might he have had on history? What does this story tell us about the power of belief and the human longing for
I
heroes?
love that. It's like instead of getting bogged down in whether or not something literally happened, we can use these stories as springboards for deeper thinking and exploration.
Exactly. And that's where the real value lies, in using these tales to engage our imaginations, expand our understanding of the human experience, and explore different ways of looking at the world.
This is all making me think about how we often talk about truth as this singular absolute thing. But maybe it's more nuanced than that. Maybe like with folktales, there are different layers of truth to be discovered depending on how we approach the story and what questions we're asking.
That's a brilliant insight, and it's something that philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Yeah.
Is truth objective and absolute, or is it subjective and context dependent? Is there one right answer, or are there multiple ways of understanding what's true?
Whoa, those are some big questions.
They are, and they make me realize that our exploration of truth in folktales is really just scratching the surface of a much larger and more complex discussion.
This is already giving me a new appreciation for the power of stories and the different ways they could reveal truth. It's like I'm seeing the world in a whole new light.
That's the magic of storytelling, right? It can illuminate hidden truths and connect us to something larger than ourselves.
It strikes me that this whole discussion about truth in folktales kind of connects to how we approach truth in our own lives. We're constantly bombarded with information and stories, and it can be tough to sort out what's real, what's exaggerated, and what's completely made up.
Yeah, that's a great point. You've hit on something really crucial. I mean, it's more important than ever to cultivate critical thinking skills and a healthy skepticism, especially with the rise of misinformation and the blurring of lines between fact and fiction online.
We need to develop a folktale mindset for navigating the modern world.
Yeah.
Being open to different perspectives, but also questioning what we encounter and looking for those deeper layers of meaning.
I love that, a folktale mindset.
And just because a story is compelling or emotionally resonant doesn't necessarily mean it's factually accurate.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between appreciating the power of stories and,
Right.
and being discerning consumers of information, not just taking everything at face value.
This makes me think about how we often talk about believing in things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think our discussion about truth in folktales can shed light on the nature of belief itself?
Oh, absolutely. Folktales often deal with the supernatural, the magical, the unexplainable, and our willingness to engage with those elements, even if we don't literally believe in them, speaks to a deeper human need to grapple with the mysteries of existence. To explore those questions that science and reason can't always answer.
It's like whether or not we believe in fairies or dragons, engaging with those stories can help us explore our own sense of wonder. Our curiosity about what lies beyond the known world.
Precisely. And for those drawn to speculative content, that exploration becomes even more profound. You're already comfortable navigating those blurry lines between reality and imagination, embracing the what ifs and the possibilities that lie beyond the everyday. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you, and I hope our listeners are walking away with a renewed appreciation for the power of folktales and a deeper understanding of the multifaceted nature of truth.
And on that note, we'll leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. If folktales with their blend of fact and fiction can offer us a different way of understanding truth and reality, what does that tell us about the nature of truth itself?
It's a question that invites each of us to continue exploring, questioning, and embracing the wonder and mystery that lie at the heart of both storytelling and the human experience.
We hope you've enjoyed the exploration and that you'll continue to seek out those stories that spark your curiosity and challenge you to think in new and exciting ways.
And now a word from our sponsor. Remember what your mother told you about not talking to strangers? Well, what did Mama know anyway? What if you are open to making friends with beings from all walks of existence? There's a multitude of strangers out there who are eager to talk to you. And with the help of the Acme Omniboard, you can talk to them all. The Omniboard has letters and planchette for verbally challenged entities, a spirit box for the chatty types, an EVP recorder for the shy ones, and a text messaging system for the most up-to-date demons. The Acme Omniboard. You never know who you'll meet. Text messaging requires cellular connection and may incur additional charges. Side effects may include oppression, obsession, or possession. Use at your own risk.
We've received some sort of message. Another transmission from Field Team Bravo. I don't know what to make of this. It's like, if this isn't some kind of hoax, the implications are incredible. We've done our best to clean up the video, but a lot of the audio is lost. Have a look and judge for yourself what's going on here.
Take a look at these things. This is crazy. It's alien. Nobody's going to believe this.
Bottom line is, we don't know where we are. Some kind of, it's like a junction. It's got like portals that lead to other places. We're going to explore one of them.
We're not going this way, man.
We don't know if we can get back. Keep us in your thoughts and prayers.
Speaking of truth versus storytelling, which do you suppose the Gaia's 20 and back guys are doing? Or do we need another category for them? Good night, resistance fighters, and God bless.
The dragons roar and the shadows creep. The clock runs backwards and the forests speak. And somewhere hidden in that crafted lie, sparks of the truth go flickering by. The villain has fallen and the hero wept. The kingdom is saved and the secrets kept. Behind every mask and cleverly disguised, the truth peers out through borrowed eyes. Once upon a time, long ago and far away, silver mirrors catch the fading light of day. Wrap it up in wonder, send it back with art, to shine through your locked windows and illuminate your heart. A swan feather cloak and away we fly, to a long-forgotten home where all our wishes lie. Distant bells whisper in seductive rings, a half-remembered melody our heart still sings. And they all lived happily ever after. They all found what they're chasing after, following fast, but it's fading faster. Once upon a time, long ago and far away, silver mirrors catch the fading light of day. Wrap it up in wonder, send it back with art, to shine through your locked windows and illuminate your heart. And they all lived happily ever after. They all found what they're chasing after, following fast, but it's fading faster. Once upon a time, long ago and far away,